Hey guys, welcome back as always. My name is Leyzar, and today, my friends, we're gonna talk about leveling stuff up in Warframe. Your primaries, your secondaries, your melees, your Warframes, your companions, Archwing, heavy weapons, essentially everything. There's two things which I will leave out. I will leave out operators and I will leave out Necramechs because I simply don't wanna spoil stuff for you. But don't worry about it, they're pretty simple to understand. Let's start off with the basics. In most MMO-like games, you heard of experience points, which is essentially what governs you leveling up your Warframes, weapons, and so on and so forth. Only here in Warframe, we're a bit more upstate, so we call things affinity, not experience points. So bear that one in mind. Every time you hear affinity, is essentially the plain old XP. So what can you level in Warframe anyway? Well, you can level your Warframes. All of these guys, you can level your weapons. You got primaries, you got second, you got melee weapons, you even got heavy weapons, you got your Archwings. Essentially, even your companions can be leveled up. And take a look at my companions. They have a little bit numbers next to them. This one has a 7, this one has a 5, a 2, a 1, and so on and so forth. Those are the numbers of forma planted into my companions. And we forma things so we can use more powerful mods. The problem is, to forma something, it needs to be max level. Max level is normally 30. There are a few exceptions in Warframe, which we will not talk about today. But normally you get to 30 and that's max level. But if you forma something, back to level 0. So you gotta re-level it again, so you can reforma and so on and so forth. And you get extreme cases like this one. I leveled up this Kavat 8 times. So bear that one in mind. But how is this affinity distributed anyway? How does it actually work? Well, let's go into a mission and I will explain. Let's talk about the affinity range. By default, you're looking at 50 meters. That means you can stay 50 meters from your squad mates and you'll still get all the affinity from their kills. And speaking about kills, let's see how the actual affinity is distributed. If you kill something with a Warframe ability, that Warframe will get 100% of the XP or affinity. So basically, if you use Mesa's 4 ability, Pacemaker, and you kill a whole bunch of enemies, all of that affinity goes directly to your Warframe, which is why Warframes such as Mesa or Revenant, for example, are very easy to level. But what happens if you kill an enemy with your weapon like I just did with Miss Hydron? Essentially, it's a 50-50 split. 50% to your Warframe and 50% to your weapon, the weapon that did the killing, that is. So once again, if you're gonna use your secondary to kill off a target, 50% goes to your weapon and 50% to your Warframe. That's all well and good, but what happens if a squad mate kills a target? Essentially, 25% of the affinity will be going to your Warframe and 75% will be equally divided between your weapons, primary, secondary, and your melee weapon as well. So bear that one in mind. Knowing all we know, let's say we want to level our melee weapon as fast as we possibly can. What would be the solution? Well, the most easiest solution would be to leech off XP off your teammates, which is not exactly something I'm comfortable recommending, but the truth is, it's the fastest way. What you want to do is take off your primary and your secondary, leave your melee on, and simply wait for your teammates to kill all the targets while you maintain affinity range to them. You don't know what's affinity range? Take a look at the upper right portion of the screen. You see a little 3 there? That's your affinity range. That means I'm in range of 3 of my teammates. And that's the fastest way to level up a primary, a secondary, or a melee. When it comes to leveling up Warframes, it's much more advantageous to use Warframe abilities to kill off targets, then you will get the full 100% affinity. But unfortunately, not all Warframes have abilities that can AoE clear house, something like a Saren or Ember, and so on and so forth. So leveling certain Warframes like Inaros, for example, can be a little bit more taxing on the time aspect. But what about these things? What about arc guns? What happens when you deploy an arc gun? Essentially the same rules apply as before. The problem with an arc gun or a heavy weapon in normal missions is the fact that you cannot take off all your weapons, all your main weapons. So you cannot take off your primary, your secondary, and your melee at the exact same time. It's not possible. So essentially you still gotta leave one weapon on plus the deployed arc gun, and the deployed arc gun will not be taking experience points unless it is deployed, so bear that one in mind. But what about our lovely companions? What about our Kavats, our Kubros, and our Sentinels? How do they get affinity in Warframe? Essentially the same way your Warframe gets. Let me give you a clear example. Right now I am out of affinity range, but if I get close to my teammates, 1, 2, and now I'm in range of all 3 of my teammates. If a teammate kills off a target which offers 100 affinity, my Warframe will get that 100 affinity distributed as we talked about, but my Kavat will also get 100 affinity. Keep in mind that the affinity is not split between you and your companion. Now, if your companion, let's say, is a Sentinel which has a weapon, then that affinity will be split 50-50 between the companion. Let's say you got a carrier together with a sweeper, 50% to the carrier and 50% to the sweeper. So 50% to the Sentinel, 50% to the Sentinel's weapon. But you might be curious to know, how does Archwing affinity work? Is it the same thing? And the short answer would be yes, it's basically the same thing. So for example, right now, if I kill this enemy with my weapon, 50% of the affinity will go to my Archwing and 50% to the killing weapon. Equally, if my friends here kill something, 25% goes to my Archwing and the remainder of 75% gets splitted between my weapon. So my range weapon and my melee weapon. Fun fact, do you know how affinity orbs work? Essentially the same way shared affinity works. 25% to your Warframe or Archwing in this case, and the remainder of the 75% gets splitted between your equipped weapons. But what if you want the absolute maximum affinity you can get? Well, in that case, you're gonna have to get yourself a booster, and affinity boosters comes in 3 forms. You can get a 3-day one for 40 plat, a 7-day one for 80 plat, or a 30-day one for 200 plat. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not making an advocacy for buying plat, but if you want the absolute max and the fastest leveling experience, you wanna go for these boosters. And if you want even more affinity range, we gotta head down to Cetus and visit Necramech. Now this little guy sells 2 Phosphors, which are essentially these flares of sorts, and these will increase your affinity range. By how much they increase it? Now this little guy sells 2 Phosphor, a blue one and a orangish one or a red one. Essentially they do the exact same thing. They will increase your affinity range from the base 50 meters all the way to 200 meters. And this begs the question, what are the normal affinity ranges? Well, in normal missions you're looking at 50 meters. In open worlds or Archwing missions you're looking at 200 meters and unlimited range in Railjack missions. Gian Point. We're gonna mention Gian Point as an outro because Gian Point is going away, right? Gian Point is going away. It will be removed as a mecca of leveling. So essentially it's gonna go. And now that you understand how affinity distribution works in Warframe, let's say you want to level something specific. Where do I go and what exactly do I do? And the answer depends on what exactly you want to level. Let's say you want to level your primary, your secondary, or your melee weapon. In that case, let's give a clear example. I want to quickly level up my secondary weapon, my Despair. I'm gonna put in really quick a 4 into it because I have nothing better to do with my life. So there you go, presto changeo, brand new polarization on that one. And what do you know, it's back to level nothing. I gotta level it all the way back to 30. What I'm gonna be doing is taking off my primary weapon, essentially all the other weapons. Taking off my melee weapon, and one last thing that I forgot to mention when it comes to boosters, make sure you have your Kavat on, because the Kavat has a very unique mod called Charm. And when this one procs affinity boost, you're gonna be getting essentially double the affinity. That's on top of the regular affinity booster. After you got your setup all done and ready to level, the fastest and easiest way is to ask a friend to help you level. Right now in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, AoE frames such as Saren and Equinox are doing fantastically well, so I'm gonna ask my friend Sober to help me boost this weapon really quick. Hey Sober, you got a Saren? Care to help me?
Yeah, why not?
Now we've been staying in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught for about, let's say, a couple of seconds really, and my Despair is already on rank 6. Now keep in mind, my friends, I don't recommend you staying in one place and essentially doing nothing and leeching off XP. Try to help out with your teammates. In Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, it's pretty popular for people to level their weapons, so they shouldn't be too upset that you are there just to level weapons. It doesn't mean you can't give a bit of a hand. Also, if you stand in one place too much time, you are gonna kick in the AFK status, and in that case, you're gonna get no affinity whatsoever. And with a booster, with a Sarin, and this setup, and perhaps even the MR30 affinity buff, you can fully level out your weapon in a matter of a single wave. I'm talking in even under a minute, depending if you get lucky with your Kavat buff or not. Keep in mind that that Kavat buff can actually stack on top of itself, so you can get to crazy high amounts of affinity. But what if you want a more general solution? Let's say you can't be arsed to go this and that way, and let's say you like to play alone and you don't have any friends to ask for help. Well, a more general solution would be old Hydron Sedna. It's still the most popular choice among Tenno. Now, it may not be the best place to farm up, but it's still one of the most popular, and essentially in Hydron Sedna, you can level everything. Primary, secondaries, Warframes, Arc Guns, everything. There's one alternative to Hydron Sedna, however, which I do want to point out, and this one is on Saturn, and it's called Helen. Now, the XP on Helen is similar, but not the same. It's just a little tiny bit lower, but the advantage, you get Orokin cells on Helen. So essentially, if you're a more newer Tenno in Warframe, and you need those Orokin cells, definitely go for leveling on Helen. But what if you want to level your Warframe as fast as you can? Well, in that case, you might want to use the ability Rest and Rage from Equinox on your Warframe. You can do that by using the helmet system. Or, as an alternative measure, you can simply ask a friend with a Sleep Equinox to sleep your targets, then you can take them out, getting the stealth multiplier all the way to 500. And I'm gonna demonstrate that with my friend Lindy. Lindy, will you help me out to level up this Warframe?
Of course.
And the mission I recommend you do this on is a Daro on Sedna. Steel Path even for a little bit more XP. So the process is pretty simple. Your Equinox friend, thank you, sleeps your targets and you come in and you kill them, essentially. And you're gonna be getting yourself a truck and a half worth of affinity like that. The process is pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit clunky and it can definitely go a little bit sideways if you or your friend don't know exactly what you're doing. So bear that one in mind. You might not get the full amount of affinity you could from this type of farming. It's fast, it can be, keyword can be, extremely efficient, but if you want something a bit more chill, a bit more laid back, and you know what, almost, well, as good, then head on over to my favorite, Hydron Sedna. Good old Hydron Sedna. It might not be the most efficient route possible, but you know what? It's probably one of the most comfortable and the most easiest. And you don't have to explain to people why are you leaving from Hydron Sedna. Essentially, everybody knows this is a mecca for leveling essentially everything. So if you want the safe way, quote unquote safe, you don't know what to do, and all of this is simply too complicated for you, head on over to good old Hydron Sedna. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And if you got any sorts of feedback for me, by all means, drop it in the comment section down below. Also in the comment section down below, let me know what kind of guides would you guys like to see in the future. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye! It was pointed out to me by my glorious stream that I did not mention K-Drives, how to level your K-Drive. And the honest truth is that you gotta grind. That's it, you grind like this. This is how you level K-Drive. You do this. Okay, you do tricks and you grind a lot. There you go, that's how you level K-Drive. Yeah. A fantastic way of leveling up your K-Drive is, of course, to do K-Drive races. All you gotta do is pull up your K-Drive like so. Look on the map for the purple markers. See this? These are the vent kids, and the vent kids will give you access to K-Drive races. So for example, I can just walk up to Timmy over here. Hello Timmy, start the K-Drive race, and then I go and I K-Drive race like that. You get the point, right? Do K-Drive races for glorious K-Drive affinity. I'll see you next time. Bye.